thank you very much for showing up for this appointment where we are engaging on our proposed Vision 2030. I'm here with the Deputy Vice-Chancellors, DVC Lange, DVC Ferris, and DVC Harrison, as well as the COO, who are joining me to engage with you on our proposed Vision 2030. UCT Strategic Framework 2020 comes to an end in December this year. That strategic framework has served us very well, but it was developed during a time of unrest, and all of that is reflected in the document. It focuses on addressing our current challenges, many of which are also important for the future. However, developing an institutional strategy with the future in mind brings into focus new challenges that need addressing as we look towards 2030. The fourth industrial revolution is upon us. We are battling COVID-19, as well as changing needs for those we serve. Taking office at a time when the strategic framework was coming to an end presented a privilege and an opportunity to bring a new vision to UCT. And at the core of that vision are the three pillars that I've spoken about before: excellence, transformation, and sustainability. The idea that moving into the future, excellence will remain a non-negotiable, but we'll continue to pursue excellence with a very good understanding of its complexity. The fact that excellence, as much as we should pursue it and encourage it and build it, we should understand that it is not benign, it is not innocent. And also that it is enabled, it doesn't happen on its own. And so if we want to see excellence showing up in its diversity, we have to enable it in its diversity. The second pillar is transformation. And here we want to work with an understanding of transformation that says transformation is not just about employment equity and access. Those two things are important, but they are not sufficient. Having a critical mass of people from designated groups on campus in the university community is key, but it is not sufficient. We also have to move on and ensure that the institutional culture is inclusive. So we have to ensure equity of participation to make sure that we have equity of success. That's how we will see excellence showing up in its diversity. It is when we do transformation in that way that our excellence will be sustainable. And we're doing that because we want to ensure sustainable success for our university. As we look towards the future, we have to think not just of the problems of the past, even though they still affect us now, but we also have to look beyond our current context because, let's face it, the world is changing. And so as we began thinking about our vision for 2030, we asked ourselves the question, the world is changing, are we? Even before the pandemic, COVID-19, the world was changing, rapidly so. It is for this reason that we set up the Futures Think Tank to help us think through how we respond to these changes. However, with time, as discussions and engagements took place and continued in the Futures Think Tank, the focus of the think tank changed from how we should respond to the coming changes to how do we lead the change. But you see, as much as we like change, change can be disruptive. We can talk about the fact that we want change, but the truth is when it appears, it is disruptive. But truth is that change can also enhance what we do. It can make it better. It can make it stand out. And it can make it impactful. To lead the change, we have to initiate the change ourselves in order to enhance it. And of course, COVID-19 has presented us with an opportunity that we don't need anything or anybody to disrupt us. COVID-19 has disrupted us. And so fast-tracked our embracing of the need for change. We know what happened to the many leading companies that resisted change when the digital revolution started. There are numerous examples such as Nokia, Kodak, the AA, and so on. As the world changes, leading companies that do not proactively initiate change themselves run the risk of losing their edge and becoming irrelevant. A few weeks ago, I read that Kodak has repositioned itself after missing a moment and filing for bankruptcy in 2012. They are now working on manufacturing ingredients for COVID-19 drugs. Can you believe it? Kodak. Yes, the photo place, trying to grab the moment because they missed the digital revolution moment and lost business. They missed the digital transformation moment, and now they're making sure and working really hard to make sure that they do not miss the COVID-19 moment. Vision 2030 is an opportunity to make sure that UCT does not miss this moment. Universities operate in environments that are increasingly unstable, unpredictable, and competitive. The COVID-19 pandemic is the latest in a series of disruptive forces that universities have experienced in the past several decades. Digital transformation, demands for lifelong learning, financial crisis, and demands for new forms of knowledge, skills, and competencies are some of the major drivers that have made change and continuous reinvention necessary in order for universities to remain relevant, competitive, and sustainable. Digital transformation represents profound advancements in science and technology and has important implications for society, for governments, businesses, industry, and higher education institutions. These advancements, as well as their promises and perils, provide an overarching backdrop for us to reimagine the ongoing transformation of society, the future of work and professions, and the evolving role of universities as knowledge institutions. We therefore want to be proactive as UCT. And to do that, we have to initiate the change ourselves and decide for ourselves who we want to be as an institution and how we're going to distinguish ourselves. With this thinking, the Futures think tank, together working with the Vision 2030, emerged with a proposed vision, #Unleashed. Our proposed vision is to be an institution that unleashes human potential for a fair and just future. Our dream is to make a distinct contribution in 4 areas. The first one is to provide a holistic, innovative, and future-oriented education. The second goal is to conduct research that addresses Africa's problems and contributes to global knowledge. Note that we're deliberately using K to spell the word Africa, and we do that as a symbolic rejection of colonial usurpation of African agency. We are in essence reclaiming African agency. And our third goal is to give thought leadership. Our fourth goal is to inculcate an organizational ethos that supports new and diverse ways of thinking, doing, and being. In crafting these goals, we work with the notion of an integrated set of choices and of creating sustainable advantage. We ask ourselves the question, what is unique about what UCT can offer that will sustain the value of the university into the future? The fundamental approach to the development of Vision 2030 is based on the cascading down of strategic choices, from the institutional level to the implementation units. In practical terms, this implied thinking strategically about UCT in relation to our core functions, teaching and learning, and research in relation to the 6 faculties as well as their departments, and in relation to the different departments that provide professional and support services for the university. In doing this, transformation and social responsiveness were regarded as cross-cutting elements of our ethos that must be present in all strategic choices at all levels for them to be effective. I will now hand over to DVC Ferris to elaborate our vision in terms of transformation. And thereafter, she will hand over to DVC Lange and then to DVC Harrison so that we can have an elaboration of our goals. And then we'll go to the closing, the 2 goals before I hand over to the COO to talk more about how this, if you wouldn't have noticed it already, how the work of our past departments is across the vision. Loretta, over to you.
Thanks, Hetty. So whilst we were working on developing this vision, and of course we were different teams coming together, thinking about teaching and thinking about researching, keeping at the back of our mind the fact that transformation and social responsiveness are 2 cross-cutting themes when it comes to our core goals of teaching and research. And so what we then did was we asked a group of people across the university, students and staff, to help us think through what does transformation and also social responsiveness look like going forward? How does it inform the 4 areas that we have at that point already identified as the 4 key goals that we want to cascade throughout the work of the university? And then we came to this, what we call them our master transformative purpose going forward, is to redress inequality and to build social justice through targeted strategies to return dignity and amplify voice and agency. So in essence, we have 4 transformative purpose principles that ultimately informs the vision. As we do our work going forward, we want to continue to redress inequality, and it's redressing inequality as it manifests within diversity, but also the need to redress inequality through the work that we do, whether in teaching, whether in research, whether in service, in partnership with communities, because it's about redressing inequality in our broader society within the continent where we find ourselves. It is also about a return to dignity, because redressing inequality ultimately means that you need to return to dignity, or it has the effect of returning to dignity. And part of what we really want to do, and what we've actually already started through this process, is to amplify voices, the many voices that we have across campus. Many voices, the different voices coming from past, from academic staff, from students. How do we amplify voices? How do we provide agency as a community? So not how do we as executive, but how do we as a university community ensure that each one of us have agency? And how do we ensure that we amplify voices in order to reach our goals? And then ultimately, this is for us about social justice. And so we talked previously about what we want to do is we need to have defined strategies that will get us to the goal that we are seeking or that we are working towards in Vision 2030. And here is one such a strategy, which is work in progress. And we have the OIC today, and this is work present today, and this is work that is primarily currently driven by the OIC, conceptualizing different approaches to address the very many profound challenges that we have when it comes to transformation. And one of them is to begin to look at racism a little bit differently, having had an uprising, a global uprising with Black Lives Matter, and rethinking our approach with respect to racism. And so currently we are beginning to conceptualize an anti-racism approach that speaks to 4 different areas. It speaks to the need to start talking about white privilege, white accountability, and to be able to have quite honest and bold conversations about that. You would have remembered that a couple of weeks ago we had a webinar on that. But it's at the same time, it's about centering Blackness at UCT. What does it mean to be a Black academic, to be a Black student at UCT? And what do you need to actually amplify your voice and agency at UCT. At the same time, last year we started having anti-oppression dialogues, looking at intersectional approaches to race, to gender, to sexual orientation, and that will continue. And then the fourth area that we want to bring on board is acknowledging the trauma that comes with oppression. And that's something that we haven't intentionally worked towards in the past that we want to take forward. And in doing this reconceptualization, we were looking at both internal and external partnerships. And that's just one example of the kind of strategy that we want to take into the future with us. So with that, I now give over to Liz, who will talk about teaching.
Thank you very much, Loretta. As the Vice-Chancellor indicated, one of the first goal of the strategy is holistic, innovative, future-oriented education. So what is it that we mean by this? First of all, is the recognition that what UCT does is not just to produce professionals for different areas in the labor market, but what we are trying to do is to develop thinkers that are capable of shaping the future, of challenging the present, of producing innovation. We are educating citizens who are not just citizens in a particular location, but they feel citizens of the world, that are global citizens, and that they take responsibility for the world that they have inherited and understand that it is their responsibility to leave the world in a better stage than they have found it. So that's the notion of the holistic, innovative, future-oriented education. Now, what does this idea require? First of all, it requires a staff who understand that teaching is a profession, and that therefore they have the opportunities to be trained in terms of their proficiency in teaching and learning. Achieving this goal depends also on our capacity to develop new and transformative pedagogies that they will be changing the relationship between staff and students around knowledge. It also requires the critique and the engagement and the transformation with knowledge itself as it is presented in the curricula. It goes even further in the sense that in order to change pedagogies and to transform curricula, we will need often to change the space and the resources that we count with in order to do this. So as the current situation is demonstrating, probably we need many more flat classrooms where students can do a different type of work than large lecture halls where the predominant activity is one of transmission of knowledge. We also need partnerships with the stakeholders, and these partnerships have to be dynamics in the sense that once a university teaches a number of professional and formative degrees, we need to make sure that our students have a sense of what it means to work. Whether you study a degree in social sciences or whether you study engineer, we are looking at forging partnerships with the stakeholders that would allow us to give students different forms of real work experience. And then underpinning all of this, we need to have an academic, administrative, and student support that covers the totality of the student work. From the moment the student applies to the university until the university graduates, we need to have a series of services and systems that work seamlessly for the student. So as we proceeded, like Loretta was mentioning, in gathering different colleagues across academic and PAS units, we came up with this massive transformative process for the teaching and learning co-function, which is unleashing students' potential through education to be resilient agents of change for themselves and in society. And we are very glad of all the people who have contributed to develop this goal. I pass on the mic to Professor Harrison.
Thank you, Liz. So in looking at the aspect of research, our goal 2, our research, we aim to focus on the complex problems of today and the future. So these will be areas where we can be socially relevant and we can address the 4 transformative principles that Loretta spoke of: redressing inequality, returning to dignity, amplifying voice and agency, and working towards social justice. We recognize that for our research to contribute to these complex problems, it will need to be cross-cutting. And in that way, it will need to have strong disciplinary bases based on fundamental and world-leading knowledge, with interdisciplinary action and expertise, which further expands into new knowledge and new ways of doing things. Focus is on Africa, but with global benefit. And in order to achieve this, we need to create a research ecosystem that is built on partnerships, both partnerships across UCT, as well as beyond UCT, into the industry, governmental areas, the NGOs, society, and academic colleagues nationally and internationally, and across our continent. These active partnerships will include our diverse and excellent researchers which are diverse across their disciplines, their culture, their lived experience, and so forth, and excellent, again, across a number of definitions in terms of how we rate our knowledge generation here at UCT. We think that it will need teams working across disciplines, because innovative new knowledge at the forefront is something that we have already demonstrated that we know how to do, and that we must keep doing better and better. And this new knowledge can be positioned with respect to its sphere of influence in our society, and to make the maximum contribution in the global environment through being able to pull together both technical knowledge, behavioral knowledge, and many other aspects across the disciplines. We'll need to have an effective research management, which is agile, innovative, efficient, and facilitating. And while we've made progress in many aspects of this over the years that have gone by recently, we still have a long way to go. And in fact, the COVID times have taught us quite a lot about how we can be agile in our, for instance, our collaborations. And then we'll need integrated research facilities. We will want to use these research facilities for maximum benefit and impact on our research. We'll want to use them optimally, both the facilities of our own facilities and those of our collaborators, and to be able to use them in a way that we create an efficiency across these facilities, able to do the correct pieces of research with the correct research toys in the correct environment as we move forward. We'll want to integrate thinking, and so through including e-research, we should be able to enable cross-cutting facilities and their integrated use. And all of this we hope to embed within transformation and social responsiveness. So the team working on research came up with the massive transformative purpose of unleashing knowledge in and from Africa to redefine and co-create a sustainable global future. Again, a team of people drawn from across academics, self-funded researchers, support departments, the past departments, right across the team that make up our university. Thank you. I'll pass back to Hetty.
Thanks very much, Sue. Both you and Les referred to the teamwork in the development of our proposed Vision 2030. Of course, the Futures think tank was led by Professor Alison Lewis. Vision 2030 task team is led by Professor DVC Lange, and all the DVCs led different teams, all of us converging to produce this document that's here. Goal number 3 is about being a thought leader. And here We want to create a communication platform to make our teaching and learning and research enterprise visible and accessible to society. In our view, there is no point in doing groundbreaking work, whether it's in research or teaching and learning, if it is not visible and accessible to society. And that means we will get out of our context and shade outside and be thought leaders in the work that we excel in. We will also strengthen our policies and frameworks to sustain our social engagement, because that will ensure that the work that we do within the institution makes a difference outside the institution. And that's our goal 4. That's to inculcate an organizational ethos that supports new ways of thinking and being. And this is not just a transformation goal, it's a goal in everything that we do. And the idea here is to put in place policies, systems, and change management that supports environmental, social, and financial sustainability. And to ensure a cultural change focused on redressing inequality, giving voice and agency to all members of the university community and its stakeholders. This is not just a responsibility of transformation. It's something that runs across the institution and not just in academic departments, but across past or academic departments. As I end here with this slide, I want to say to you that we as the exec are aware that our greatest challenge as we get on with this vision will mainly be what happens when the UCT community gets unleashed. It's one thing to challenge the community to be unleashed, but it's another when they get unleashed. How will we manage the enthusiasm and energy of a university community that is unleashed? And how will we manage the demand for more resources to enable the unleashing? Our view is that that's the challenge that we want to take on. And we're already working on key elements that we can draw from this vision and use them as ways to transition us into Vision 2030. The DVCs are working on that, and again, they work with different teams across the university as they work on the key elements, so that by the time we get to the point of implementing Vision 2030, we have instruments that can transition us into this future, despite the tough economic circumstances that we are in, not just as a country, but as the world. I've noted your questions, and I want to get on with one question. I'm going to ask Reno. Reno, if you come online, please. And I'm going to ask Reno to start by addressing the question about what this means for our operations in the university. Not just past departments, but just our operations across the university. Reno.
Thanks, Vice-Chancellor. I think I want to say at the outset that we deliberately, in developing this dream, this Vision 2030, chose to make sure that all the task teams that we set up were not in silos, were integrated between the DVCs and the COO, as well as the composition of the task teams. We made sure that membership of those task teams included past staff and academic staff, precisely because if we want to have a dream of new ways of doing, thinking, and being, then we have to live that in the development of the dream. And as we realize that dream over the next 5 or 10 years, we will then consistently have this work done in an integrated way with academic and past staff. And that's the beginning of the dream now already. If I think of how our new ways of doing can be improved in our operations, if we just think of one example of systems and system development, we know that our student administration and management system and registration system needs to be worked on. We know that the registrar and integrated teams have already started developing. DVC Lange and Harrison spoke about research systems, precisely so that we can make the work of our academic staff and past staff of a different nature over the next 5 to 10 years. If we think of service models, human resources and finance can have shared services models. We're looking for creativity and innovation that says, how do we do things better, differently? And in previous chats, we have said we have no limits to the innovation that we want. On the issue of staffing, we want our staff to feel part of our system. We want to be able to have the difficult conversations between PAS and academic staff with a fundamental belief that if we develop an inclusive culture, an inclusive ethos, that we'll make a UCT that's better. It is not only the executive's responsibility. Yes, we are to lead, but it's the conversation that needs to happen with everyone in their departments, in their faculties, and across our system. It's the sort of you and we and us that makes transformation and organizational ethos change. Thank you, Mamokgethi.
Thanks very much, Reno. Liz, I'm going to ask that you take our next question. It comes from Anonymous, and it says, how can departments align their yearly strategies to the Vision 2030?
The first part of this is probably to accept that year strategies are not quite strategies. So we need to start thinking in the long haul. And one of the interesting things about the methodology that we have used to this strategy is that it leaves it creates parameters within which the different units can start reimagining themselves and seeing how they fit into the vision and to shape their own future along these lines. So there is a lot of work to be done, and there is a enormous amount of space for imagination and innovation. So the next strategy mustn't be a one-year strategy; it has to be at least a 5-year strategy. Thank you, Vice-Chancellor.
Thank you, Liz. Rena, do you want to talk about past departments, about how they can take that on?
In terms of past departments, some of the work has already started. I mean, we are in the 21st century. We do want to know how digital platforms can assist our work. We've already seen work in ICTS and already beginning to change the work in many of the past staff departments. This is an invitation to continue that work and to make even more changes that allow us to work differently. So we have examples already of staff in the different departments, making sure that as they work remotely, that we continue the operations of the university, but not just in the way we've done it in the past, but certainly to do it differently in the future. And we as an executive, and I certainly in the portfolios that I work on, are committed to make sure that all our past departments and all our managers work and find a new normal that makes us a better UCT.
Liz, I'm going to ask you to answer this question that comes up in all the meetings that we have. That's about the new normal. Many academics are wondering whether we will continue to be online. Are we going to be an online university now that we've had one semester with emergency remote learning? What's the future? And I'd like you to talk to the colleagues about a blended future, what it looks like in terms of teaching and learning. And then I'll ask Sue, and then I'll go to Reno to answer the question from Elmi. Liz?
Thank you, Vice-Chancellor. Our blended future has been accelerated through the pandemic, and it is clear that the university is in a position to harness technology in ways that we have not been doing up to now. In some respects, we are a bit behind the curve when we compare ourselves with some of our international competitors and actually some of our local competitors. So we have a lot of work to do, but I mean, what it is interesting is that through this period, we have learned an enormous amount in relation to this. So the future of the university it has to do with understanding first and foremost that we are a contact university. We offer a residential experience of the totality of the education that we are providing. In terms of the offering of particular programs and qualifications, we think that the combination of blended learning, that is online learning and contact learning for undergraduate degrees, is an important aspect of what we can offer. We are hoping to select some postgraduate degrees for offering online. And we are looking forward to exploit an area of work that the university has not fully exploited up to now, which is the area of short learning programs and micro-credentials. So that's where we are trying to move. Thank you, Vice-Chancellor.
Thanks, Liz. Sue?
Thank you, Katie. So Liz spoke briefly about postgrad programs that would be keen to move into a blended learning space, and particularly where we attract postgrad students from the workplace, from different environments, because this will allow us to include much of the content material in the online modules, but then bring the students together for the parts of the work where the actual contact and working together will change ways of thinking, doing and being. And I think this is a very exciting approach. We had begun to look at it in a couple of programs already, and our new environment really allows us to open that up a whole lot more. And I think the other area which is really exciting about the blended learning space is how it allows us to potentially expand our international experience to many more students. And this is a space where we'd like to be able to look at courses which many of you may give, where we can team up with other universities, and we can have parts of these courses being done with students from other universities, students from with other experiences, potentially interactively, so that we can build that international experience for students who are not going to be able to necessarily travel abroad for a semester. Not that we will stop our semester abroad travels, but by doing it this way, we'll be able to expand the exposure of this kind of internationalization. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks very much, Sue. Reno, there's a question from Elmi, I think it's the name, and they say, do you have plans for new technology and new leadership structures in healthcare specifically? We have to rethink issues like costs and models of care in South African healthcare services, in the South African healthcare sector. It is important that you also hear clinicians' voices, and UCT should take the lead on this. We are in a unique situation to drive this in collaboration with Grooterschuur Hospital. So I'm going to ask Reno to talk a little bit to that, but I also want Liz to think about it, and Sue, or perhaps Sue in particular, because we have mainly people in the postgraduate sector who are both scientists and clinicians. So after Reno, I'm going to ask you, Sue, to talk about this, particularly because I think you also sit on the board that brings the two entities together, Grooterschuur and the university. Reno.
Mamokgethi, this is a fantastic question that speaks really into the Vision 2030 dream. It's about thought leadership, and clearly it recognizes that South Africa and the South African health system has to deal with all its inequalities, that if we are to have a better health system, that we need to lead in innovative models and leadership structures. I think part of Sue's answer and Liz's answer will speak into that. And working with the faculty, and this is where the Vision 2030 is so beautiful as a construct, is that it relies on the faculty to be able to develop plans that can take us forward. And the whole thinking behind it is precisely to deal with that question. And from a perspective of the health sector, clearly one wants to work within a model that works across from Grooterschuur all the way to community care, because there lies the innovation, there lies the unleashing of human potential to address a fair and just society, of which healthcare is such an important component of addressing the inequality. So yes, there's a commitment, and yes, working with the faculty will be just a part of this vision, and we must lead, and we should lead. I'll hand over to Sue for research and Liz in terms of teaching and learning. Thanks, Mamokgethi.
Thanks very much. I'd like to say, Almi, again, I think this is a lovely question, excellent question. So Katie explained that we're going to unleash UCT, and in unleashing UCT, it gives us the opportunity to do things very differently. And it's for us as a university community, and not just for us as the executive. to think through how we need to do things differently. So there's potential for new models and new ways of doing things. I've had some really wonderful experiences in the last few weeks of hearing the clinicians' voices come through, both in reviews of some of our absolutely wonderful research groupings where clinicians and are working across the space of real clinical work and then back right into deep fundamental work. And also in conversations I've been holding around the work that we're doing on COVID, and seeing how strongly this needs to we need to work on, we need to use the skills we've built within UCT to really be able to direct where we're going here. So I look forward to this conversation. I look forward to how we're going to move this forward, and to the ideas which are going to come out of the health sciences faculty, but also the ideas which are going to come from integrating our thinking across the university, because it's not just about health sciences, it's also about how we respond and the people-centered social side of it, etc. It will be a great thing to work on. I look forward to it. So let's move that way. Liz?
In relation to this particular question, I think that the work of the clinicians is very well defined in its importance in the teaching and learning environment. Interestingly enough, this year one of the winners of the award to the teaching excellence at the university is a clinician. I mean, out of 4, 1 is a clinician. So the contribution made by clinicians to different ways of thinking at the university and to different approaches to learning is hugely important. I think that there have been recognition of that, also in their own promotions, in the recognition of the work. I'm sure that much more needs to be done to integrate these things in a way in which the dialogue is more fluid, and I think that the strategy presents a very, very interesting opportunity to do that.
Lisa, can I ask you to continue, perhaps answer this question that says, how will progress of Vision 2030 be measured and monitored? Because we know that IPD, that reports to you, will manage the monitoring of our delivery in this regard.
Sure, thank you, Hetty. I think that one of the things that we need to do once we have sort of settled completely with the vision is to start developing implementation plans, and it is the implementation plan that are going to be defining what are the specific measurements that we are aiming for. Just to give examples in my portfolio, how many courses will go into blended learning by when? How will we improve the experience of students in their classroom, sort of digital classroom environment? There are a number of things. How many courses we can develop that operate at an interdisciplinary manner? The success that we have in enrolling the students, our footprint in terms of internationalization, the success that we have in the transformation of the curriculum. All of these things are areas of measurement. We will need to develop appropriate indicators for those areas, and we need to make sure that these things are simple, are transparent, and that do not create extra work for people to measure them. It is very important that the strategy does not come out of the drawer when we have to report back, but that it is a living organism that everybody's thinking about it. So I think that, but I mean, we need a little bit of time to put the things on the table, but they will be discussed also as part of the same process. Thank you, Vice-Chancellor.
Loretta, I'm going to ask that you respond to this one question that says organizational ethos are important. The current climate makes it very difficult for anyone in the lower ranks to question or argue and freely differ with senior colleagues, as this is a sure way of career limiting oneself. Progressively, one finds their voices as they climb across the ranks. However, by the time they reach full professorship, they are completely battered and voiceless. How do we achieve giving people a voice? Loretta?
Thanks, Hetty. So, I mean, when I look at this question, I think to myself, it cannot be that on the one hand, as a university, we put such a high premium on academic freedom. And at the same time, there are colleagues that feel that they're not able to freely express themselves. And that's why we need to, and it's not that we're not aware of this, and so that's why this notion of amplifying voice and agency is such an important theme that you know, crosses Vision 2030, because we realize that this is something that we all have to work on. And so this is a challenge, I think, that the person that's asking the question is really posing to each HOD, to each dean, to each ED, is to say, you know, how do you ensure that there is a culture within your department where people can freely express themselves and engage with each other in a way that is respectful? Because I think when we're silencing each other, we are not enabling each other to grow. Because it's often through that feedback, it's often through that interaction and that debate that both parties may grow. And of course, when I say we're not unaware of this, some of this feedback we have received through the Inclusivity survey that we ran last year. And so those departments now have their reports. And so EDs and deans are aware of what are the particular challenges within their spaces. But it doesn't stop there. Between myself and Reno, we are working on a strategy to support departments in terms of addressing the issues that has come up through the survey and carving out interventions and also bringing in expertise. We may not necessarily have all the expertise within UCT, but we are actively looking at external service providers that can help us, because we don't always have the answers. We're not always able to actually manage those processes that may be required to change the institutional culture within your department and within your faculty. And then I have one other response, and that is, I fundamentally believe that whether you're a woman, whether you're a Black person, that we need to look at ways that we can provide support to each other. You know, so in whatever way you feel marginalized, and it's true. I mean, the point is that there's certainly a perception that the higher up in the ranks you are, the more agency you have. I don't think it should be that way, but I also believe that to the extent that you are progressing up the ranks, I do think that there is a perhaps I don't know whether there's a duty, but perhaps I think we should begin to think of how do I support some of my colleagues that may be entering UCT and that may be feeling marginalized and alienated, and so that would be one way in which we all can, I think, contribute towards amplifying voice and agency in the university.
Thanks very much, Loretta. I think it's also important to say that kind of culture starts with me down, not just with HODs and EDs, but also it goes on the recognition of what it means. I mean, I think sometimes we forget our history as a country and what oppression does and what the brutality of our past has done on people, and also what it means to be in a place of excellence, that everyone feels watched. And so even when people are not being critiqued, sometimes we self-censor. It doesn't mean people are higher, better, or lower, but it sort of takes both sides, as you say, to take care of one another. But the sentence that says we don't do that at UCT is a usual one. The sentence that everyone feels on trial is something, but it comes with institutional culture, and the conversations that you have set up are getting us to have conversations about, you know, to face our past and craft the future together. I want to go to Liz. The next question there says, is there any way this vision can be cascaded within departments, assuring that this organizational vision is the one that is being lived within departments? How do we ensure that there is an adherence to the university strategy and vision? Are there measures, are there deliverables for departments? Yes.
Thank you for the question. I think it is a very important question, because this is the area in which all these things become difficult to navigate from a management point of view. The sense that we have up to now is that there is an emotional and intellectual buy-into of these things. But you do not do a strategy just through emotions and buying into. You need to put in place different elements of accountability. So right now, one of the things that we are doing is to discuss with the teams, and this is within my own line of reporting. What are the broader parameters of performance that one expects? Certainly, strategic implementation is one of them, and within that, certain specific issues per faculty. This has to cascade down to the departmental level. So there is always this sort of what is the space for freedom within this and what one commits oneself, etc. But I mean, when we talk about performance, it's not so much about individual performance. It's about the performance of the university and what each of us can do to contribute to the university achieving its objectives. So yes, I think that there are ways in which people have to negotiate deliverables and the space for responsibility and accountability down to the departmental level. Thank you, Vice-Chancellor.
Thanks very much, Les. The next question is to Reno, and it says, how will we balance the fiscal impact of COVID-19, the downturn of the global economy, and the wish to fund Vision 2030 project?
Thanks, Mamokgethi. Just the response of the Vice-Chancellor and the DVCs means that it is a difficult balance and a difficult question. But the important thing is the certainty and commitment that the executive have to do things concurrently. It is not possible, and it shouldn't be, if you're a leading organization and a university like ours, where we do things that don't secure our environmental, social, and financial sustainability 15, 20 years from now. So yes, we need to take some steps to tighten our belts, to make sure that we deliver on things more efficiently and effectively. At the same time, we need to be aware of how the economy is affecting us, and also that if we do not do projects, and this is where Mamokgethi, you may want to comment about your own commitment and the way we want to fund new projects. If you don't do new projects that have a material effect on how the university will function in the future, we lose the opportunity that's presented to us. COVID-19 has given us challenges, but we also recognize that it's given us opportunities. And there's a certainty from the executive and the leadership side that we will balance the commitment to look at how we do things efficiently, but at the same time, we would want to fund new and innovative projects, because those ultimately will bring us a wonderful return on investment. An example in environmental sustainability is in fact our water sustainability project that is funded by DOET. We have to do that now, and in years to come, over a certain period, it will reap the rewards that makes UCT a much greener and better campus, or at least part of it. And I think that's the commitment. It is a challenge. We are asking faculties and staff and students to work with us, but there is a commitment to do and balance all of that. I think, Mamokgethi, that's where I would start in responding to that.
Thanks very much, Reno. Sue, the next question is to you. What plans are being formulated to restructure research practice to enable this excellence? And are they also aligned, and make sure that they are also aligned with the vision?
Thank you, Khethi. This is a really good and challenging question. I think UCT in its fabric is quite focused on excellence, and we like to deliver research excellence. The big question is, how do we do this in a way that aligns with the complex problems of today and the future that we want to focus on, and how do we align with Vision 2030? And I think these conversations are the two things I want to say here. Firstly is I think these conversations are they've started. We began to talk about this last year in our research symposium. There are conversations going on with people as we move along. And I think that it's the research community who's going to help us to drive this, provided our research community at UCT is bought into our massive transformative process statement of research around unleashing knowledge in and from Africa to redefine and co-create a sustainable global future. I think if we're bought into that as a university, it won't be difficult to realign. And the second thing I'd like to say is if we look at what's happened over the last few months with the impact of COVID, and if we look at how research in this university has pivoted to meet needs, to focus on critical things where we need new knowledge quickly, how we've used the platforms and the skills that we've set up, for instance, in our HIV and TB research and our clinical platforms, and we've been able to use those to move into COVID research. That shows how we're going to be able to use areas of excellence already established in this university, but we're going to be able to reform them into the areas where that align well with our strategic vision. Thank you very much. Just some starting thoughts.
Thanks very much, Sue. All right, and then the next question says, when departments unleash and come up with ideas and projects, by which process will these be assessed and considered for funding? I thought perhaps what we should do at this point is to elaborate a little bit on what I said about the challenge of unleashing the university and what we are putting in place as a way to transition to 2030. So we have been engaging on this, and we thought as the executive, what we should do is to identify in our Vision 2030 key elements, that is those changes to the institutional base, the changes that we can make to the institutional base that are necessary conditions for changes in the functional or in the functioning culture or delivery of our work at UCT. So what are those things that if you look at and we say, if we change this, they will actually transition us. They will serve as necessary conditions for change in how we function, in the institutional culture, and in the delivery of our work. And so a few weeks ago, we agreed with executives that the Deputy Vice-Chancellors and the COO have a challenge to look for those key elements in Vision 2030, working with you. They have the challenge to look at the key elements in their portfolio within the 2030. They don't have to do it separately, they can work together. But we agreed on the criteria that those key elements that we will then focus on as a way to transition us, so that we don't have as a start, we have everyone wanting to do something different. And at the end, there isn't a focus, there isn't impact. So we start in that way, and the criteria that we've put, we said the key element that is selected by the DVC or at the end, what we select as a team must have the maximum multiplier effect, must be a game changer in the area where it happens, whether it happens in teaching and learning or research or social responsiveness, it must be a game changer. And simultaneously, it must bring great benefit for other areas of operations, at least in 6 to 2 years. It must be of benefit to other areas so that it doesn't only work on its own, right? It must also be a necessary condition for other things to happen that represent radical change within the core function of the university. So any initiative or proposal that the DVCs put on the table as a key element from their portfolio has to do that, must be a necessary change. It must also have the potential to contribute substantively to financial recovery, because what we're looking at is asking the university to invest in this transition to Vision 2030. But in that investment, it's not that you are starting an operation that will annually require you to invest consistently, no end. You make an injection, and whatever you inject in can contribute substantively to financial recovery, even if immediately they require major investment. The return will be higher. So we are not looking for things that will add to the salary bill or that will be an addition to the GOB, just as a start to get us to transition as a start. You may be asking, so what happens then if the department or individual? I mean, my advice to departments is that you should get in contact with Professor Lange. We have what we call future catalysts, a team of people or the D school who can come and work with you so that in the department, you don't have each one in the department wanting to start something that's for them. And they say, well, this is what it does. The university should do this because I want it. That you can work together as a department and work with the futures catalyst to find common ground to do these things. And of course, there's no doubt that departments have to think about, if you want something to be invested on continuously, you also have to think about, what do we stop doing? So the idea is not to start a parallel operation. The idea is that if you're transitioning into the future, there are things that you will say, this is part of the past. We spent money on this previously, and we won't continue in this. So that's some of the difficult conversations that you should have in the department, as much as thinking about what transitioning into this future looks like. That was a longish answer. Can I just check if there's any contribution from the DVCs?
Mamokgethi, there is a question that deals with budget resources and the challenges in the current cycle, and the fact that we are constrained, and yet at the same time we are proposing Vision 2030. And I think it does also deal with the issue of UCT as an employer of choice for staff, as well as a university of choice for students. And I think it's that difficult balance that the executive faces together with the leadership in straddling what we have now called Budget 21 as a crisis budget. We need to recognize that it is a crisis. We need to manage it as a crisis. But at the same time, if we are to secure the future of the university, we also need to ensure that Budget 2022, 2023, and so on becomes a recovery budget. And the only way you can do that is, as you've indicated, is to manage those things that you face as a challenge, manage them well, but at the same time, shed some things that actually give you the opportunity to do something different. And I think that's the approach that the executive is taking. We're also asking students and staff to work with us on that. And unless we do it in partnership and in collaboration, we will not achieve a new UCT and also manage us through the crisis. We are blessed by the fact that through sound financial management, we are in a position where we can advantage and make sure that we protect our staff as an employer of choice. And in many of the fora you have indicated, and we still do, that the protection of jobs and having staff available in 2020 and 2021 was our first priority, their health and safety another priority. That's all a reflection of who we are as an employer of choice. The other aspect of the employer of choice is that we must still be here in 15 to 20 years' time, being financially sound, still producing wonderful and great research, still producing fantastic graduates, and having a socially responsive university. A difficult road, but a road that the executive have taken up as a challenge with the leadership in the university.
Thank you very much, Reno. I want to say something a little bit about, in times of crisis, in times when resources are not enough, it's sort of makes sense sometimes to say we're not going to do anything, don't spend, just cut costs and keep alive. But I was reading the book, How the Mighty Fall, and it's an interesting book because it talks about companies that were top of the pops and how they went under. Of course, part of it is complacency, thinking that you have arrived and so on and so forth. But one of the things they talk about is how companies respond in these troubled times, that cutting costs is the first place to go to. Our view is that at this time of crisis, economically and otherwise, and rapid change and uncertainty, this is a time to think critically about, rather than cutting costs, but looking at where you want to be, who you want to be as an institution, and then think critically about what do we choose to invest in? And why do we invest? Like, think carefully about that, because that calls, what shouldn't we be doing? We can't be everything to everybody. We've got to stop doing certain things. What do we stop doing as a department? And we stop doing that, not because we feel guilty, we stop the guilt, we stop whatever. This is about the future that we want to be. And then we make decisions, we invest in that, rather than just think about cutting. You think about repurposing, investing with an idea of making a return, but also securing a sustainable future. That's how I would like us to think, and not just look at the numbers cut so that everything is okay. We're looking at this vision and the strategy, and we're saying, how do we make sure that we craft a sustainable future for the university? Colleagues, thank you very much for being here, for asking the questions, for engaging, for provoking us, but also thank you to the DVCs and the COO for all the responses that you've given. Really appreciate your assistance. Thank you very much.